Only 5 survived. It's that difficult a challenge. And from those 6 words, they were challenged to create one short piece of original writing. Could be a scene, could be a poem, could be a story. The words were sorry, glaze, paisley, laundry, rhubarb, and appurtenance. I know there's one of those words that's kind of harder than the other, so laundry is what you usually do on the weekends when you got a lot of dirty clothes and put those in the washing machine. We've got Anna Ross up here, Natty Forsythe, Betsy Gomez, who's going to be reading a piece written by Fauzi Nicholas, who wasn't able to be here tonight, he's under the weather, Kristen Hill, and Virginia Magru. Good. So I think we'll just go in this order from side to side.
I get to be first. So I contributed the word laundry because I have young children. So I don't just do my laundry on the weekends. And I'm sure that I don't have to remind you of this, but I had to look it up just to make sure I was getting it right. An appurtenance is something that pertains to a mode of being, a lifestyle, usually an item of some sort. The appurtenance of luxury is the example that I was given by my online dictionary. So I've been, for the last several months, working on a series of self-portraits. And the fun thing about working on a series is that suddenly everything can be in that series. So I just added this in. My poem is called Self-Portrait with Appurtenances. Got that one out of the way immediately. Self-portrait with appurtenances. I'm sorry for the glaze in my voice, its fine cracks tickling and swerving down the back of my throat, and for the dream last night in which I danced paisleys around the backyard while the sky soured. I'm sorry for late silences like crows gathering, for the girl whose arms I helped hold during 4th grade recess as we forced her to eat one curling earthworm, her face rhubarb as she swallowed, and for holding those arms. I'm sorry for highways like retinal tears, for the unhatched, unspun, never grown, for that cow who, after years of grazing the mountain's face, finally made it to the peak this last long autumn, then froze when the snows came in. And for burnt oatmeal, false gods, and convenient ghosts, for pour me another and one last kiss, and washing the laundry pink, 2nd time this month, for 10 minutes late, no excuses, for every night unstitched from sleep, I'm sorry for that solitary twitch in your right eye.
I wrote a short fiction piece. I didn't come up with the title, so I'm going to call it Sorry Rhubarb Glaze, Paisley, Laundry, Appurtenance. And this piece is dedicated to my lovely wife, Eliza. The decision to kill her husband was the most difficult choice Margaret had made in quite some time. There were many options, and most were unpleasant. Bludgeoning with the croquet mallet was out of the question. The drop from their 2nd floor balcony, too short. Stabbing would leave an awful mess, and might lead to all kinds of questions from the Mexican girl who took care of the laundry. She needed a more civilized method, something clean and quick. You seem glum, effulgent darling of mine, my tender button mender, Carl said to her from the breakfast table. He was always talking like that, rambling, quoting, spouting nonsense. It had been quite likable for the first 10 or 20 years. Then it had annoyed the piss out of her. And now, on the cusp of their 40th anniversary, it filled her with a deep and abiding boredom, like a paisley settee long appurtenanced to a dim and distant corner of the parlor. She handled her spatula like an implement of torture. She didn't cook often. She had bought the rhubarb plants special for the garden, she had told the nursery attendant, silently congratulating her own deviousness. Was it the stems or the leaves one wanted? For good measure, she chopped the whole plant and let it scramble with the eggs in the pan. She pushed it onto Carl's plate. I read in Good Housekeeping that you should mix greens with your eggs for complementary proteins. As Bogey said to Hepburn, I never tried shooting myself in the head, though it'd help my hats fit better. He took a bite. Scrumptious! You never fail to amaze. She stirred her tea around and around, spoon tapping the edge of her mug. We should buy you a new Miata. Red this time? It goes with that scarf. Oh, aren't you having any? She said she wasn't hungry and waited, but as the day stretched on and they stretched out on deck chairs and she could barely turn a page in the novel she was reading, it became apparent that Carl was not about to die, though he had become very gassy. She slicked the floor at the top of the stairs with a glaze of hazelnut oil, but his sure-footedness was astounding. Sorry, a bit of a spill up here, Madge. Probably my fault. She left the engine of her Mercedes running in the sealed garage all day, but the only casualty was the orange tabby that slept nestled in the pool covers. She doused his coffee with almond extract, but it seemed that the liar had never actually been allergic. She considered other bizarre, improbable schemes, lining his swim trunks with lead weights, waiting for Carl to contract a cold and soaking all the tissues in the house with laudanum, weakening the floor and removing the correct support beam from the basement so that when Carl performed his daily 1,000 jumping jacks in the exercise room, he would go plummeting down and snap his neck on the poured concrete foundation. She tested the trajectory of a bowling ball rolled down the banister, but the dents it left in the tile floor were far enough apart that it took 2 palmat rugs to cover up. By the end of the week, Margaret was exhausted. She wasn't used to having such difficulty with a thing when she wanted it. She felt cross. Carl dropped himself into bed, as he always did, falling with a smack against a firm down pillow on the headboard behind his neck. She thought she couldn't stop herself. What if she began pulling feathers from that pillow, a few, every night while he slept, until it was leaner, flatter, slowly so that Carl would never notice. And then one night he would fall on that pillow, and crack, his skull would break on the polished mahogany and instant death in bed, no questions asked. She sighed. How long would that take? The rest of the life she had left? Longer? Everything that had seemed so open, so possible just a few days prior, was collapsing upon her. Carl slowly lifted himself, humming something by Mahler, and dragged his feet to the ensuite bathroom. Margaret quickly followed behind, taking the key from atop the door frame, and locked it. The toilet flushed and the sink ran. Carl rattled the doorknob. He tried to turn the latch, but she held the key in place. Margaret, are you there? Halloo, hooray! The lock seems stuck. Margaret? Sugar pie? Honeysuckle? If she could just hold the door shut long enough, he might starve to death. Simple. Only she must keep it closed tight. He wasn't strong enough to force his way through. Don't you ever feel, she asked Carl through the bathroom door, that you deserve the chance to start something new? She leaned against the door and tried to ignore his fists pounding, rattling the wood. Thanks.